Well, welcome to Etchin World Live, and today we have two special guests, the authors of Among the Braves, which I have a copy here. They are now in Singapore. We have Shibani, Mahtani, and also Timothy McLaughlin. Thank you for appearing on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Maybe I'll give you, we'll talk a little bit about your background. Shibani is an international investigative correspondent for the Washington Post, was previously the Post Hong Kong and Southeast Asia bureau chief and a correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Her Hong Kong coverage was honored with prizes including the Human Rights Award. She is a graduate of the London School of Economics and Political Science and the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. And for Timothy, he is a prize-winning contributing editor for The Atlantic. Previously, he worked for Reuters. His work has also appeared in Wired, The Washington Post, The Los Angeles Times, Prospect, and more. He has won multiple awards for his Hong Kong coverage, including 2 Best in Business awards from the Society of Advanced Business Editing, and is a 2-time finalist for the Livingston Award for International Reporting. He is a graduate of the University of Southern California. Mahtani and McLaughlin live in Singapore with their adopted Hong Kong village. Everything is from this book.
Yeah.
But, welcome. Surprisingly, we have never met in at the FCC before when you were living in Hong Kong.
Yeah, but really good to be connected now here.
Yeah, good to be here virtually.
Yes. Now, this book, it's more on the, should I say, the Lam Chao side, but not the peaceful protests or marches that I have joined, many of them since 2014. Benny Tai was my senior classmate from DBS, Diocesan Boys School, and he started to occupy Central with Love and Peace. And in your book, there was a few characters you highlighted, Reverend Chu, Vin Lau, and also Gwyneth Ho Guai Lam, right? So a few main characters. And also there is a Tommy, which I don't know who Tommy is. You just use Tommy, right? So I guess he hides his true identity. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we really tried to contextualize 2019 in sort of the broader history, right, of Hong Kong and kind of help people understand, especially people who are sort of new to the story and like don't know the background at all, right? Like how we actually got to where we got in 2019, right? What happened there, and like there's obviously a huge amount of historical context, so that's what we tried to bring to the book as well.
Yes, and you go even way back. I mean, with pictures on Martin Lee during the Tiananmen time, 1989, with Reverend Chu standing at the back. So some very precious pictures, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with the story, with the book, we wanted to tell, some of the history of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement starting, even before 1989. And, one way to do that we thought would be kind of effective and interesting to readers, again, for people, particularly who aren't familiar maybe with the Hong Kong story so much, was, use Reverend Chu's story as kind of a conduit for that, because it did, he was there at so many kind of pivotal moments during the protest movements over the years. He was there, at Tiananmen and helping dissidents escape, from the mainland to Hong Kong. He's quite a bit older than the rest of the characters or subjects of the book. So yeah, I mean, I think his life, like you said, he's kind of just in the background of so many kind of moments, in Hong Kong over the past kind of many decades. Really, really fascinating story. And I think we're very happy that we could kind of share it with a broader audience, an English language reading audience who might not, have access to, his book that I know just came out, or some of the stuff that he's written before in Chinese language.
And this book actually comes in very timely as the Hong Kong court is wrapping up with the 47 cases right now. And also Mr. Lai's case is coming up on December 18th. But I guess maybe I want to ask you about the feedback. You just came back from a U.S. and Canada tour. How is the feedback like when you do different sharing with different groups? You went to Chicago and Vancouver.
Yeah, no, it's been really overwhelming and really meaningful. I think like it's really heartening to know that this book has like sort of touched so many people. When we were at different events, people would come up to us and say stuff like, oh, actually you interviewed us in 2019, but we were anonymous, so you didn't know us then. Or they would say like, actually, I was at 721, or I was at July 1st, the electrical break-in, and this I feel like this really tells our story, or we feel represented in this book somehow, right? So I think that was very special and very meaningful to us. Also, one thing that was really interesting is actually at some of these events, there were quite a few like mainland Chinese students who came and were actually very interested in Hong Kong and talking about the connection between the blank paper protests, exactly a year ago now, and how they were sort of inspired by Hong Kong. That was something that I didn't expect. That was like really quite special to see. And then we also at these events always reach out to people who have know nothing about Hong Kong, right? But they just like happen to come into a reading, or they happen to come into an event, and then through that hopefully can learn more about the story, right? Especially as the news agenda has kind of moved on a little bit, right, with Gaza and Ukraine, globally.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just echo what Shibani said. It was really interesting. We had people in New York come up to us and say, I know nothing about Hong Kong. I didn't really follow the news. Kind of like, why should I buy this book? And then they would go on and buy it. And then in Canada, we had ex-lawmakers from Hong Kong who had spent their entire career in the political system in Hong Kong, who obviously know much more than even we do about the topic. So it was kind of fascinating to see the cross section of people. I guess some people who have never set foot in Hong Kong, who maybe saw a little bit of the news, and then other people who have kind of dedicated their whole life to the city. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's what we're going for as well. We wanted to make sure that the book was kind of approachable, and people who didn't know much could kind of pick it up and get an understanding of what was going on. And hopefully also it had some details and things in there that other people who did follow the city very closely would also find interesting.
Yeah. Actually, when you had more publicity back 3-4 weeks ago, one of the things that I won't say shocked me, but was that Joshua about Wang Zifeng, right? That he tried to get political asylum from the U.S. consulate. So it's reviewed in the book. And now, have you got a chance to talk to Joshua before his arrest, or you met him a few times? I know you met with Fin Lau quite a few times, and Gwyneth. But how about Joshua?
Yeah, I interviewed him a number of times, and obviously, Joshua Wong is obviously so iconic, right? I mean, he is really like, for many, especially outside of Hong Kong, right? The definition of the Hong Kong movement is Joshua Wong, right? But obviously he was in jail, right? From December of 2020, right? Yeah, December of 2020. So since then, access has been obviously through other intermediaries, or different ways.
Yeah, and also in the book you mentioned a very famous DJ, that's Cam Chi, 5 Beat, Fast Beats. Yep. Actually, I met Fast Beats' relative actually in Chicago.
Yeah.
Last week.
Yeah, I mean, he's interesting. I think for a number of reasons. Just his personality. He's an interesting guy. I visited him in jail a couple of times.
Okay.
To interview him and discuss his case and the other stuff happening in Hong Kong. I mean, I think his case is still, like, to this day, fascinating and troubling in the way that it kind of combined the national security law with the old British sedition laws and kind of melded that together. And I think that was the first case where we kind of saw that happen. At the time, he was not obviously a huge name like Joshua Wong or Martin Lee. So perhaps in English language press didn't get that much coverage, but I think like a really troubling case. I think it's really interesting, how he's remained so outspoken. Still has a team updating his Facebook page all the time and his Patreon. He's very open to speaking with journalists about what's happening in his case. And I think more people should be paying attention to it because he's appealed the sedition part of it, and I think that outcome will obviously have a big implications on freedom of speech in Hong Kong, what the press can say. So yeah, I mean, I certainly hope more people are kind of paying attention to what's going on with him.
And less coverage on some of the older activists, Martin, Jimmy Lai. Is there any reason why they are not covered, or is it just fit the title Among the Braves? It's more on the Lam Chao side. So just want to get your point of view on that.
Well, I mean, I think we obviously have Reverend Chu's story very well documented in there as a way to kind of talk about that generation, right? Which was really a generation that set the framework, right, and the pathway for what the modern pro-democracy movement looked like, and then obviously changed in many iterations through 2014, 2016 with the rise of localism, and then 2019, of course. But frankly, the biggest complication with this book was that when we started it, that's when everything in Hong Kong really started deteriorating in a huge way. I mean, that was when all these cases were very live, things were very suddenly the environment, right, even for people like Martin Lee or those associated with the alliance, just got much more scary and much more difficult, and some of these people have sort of chosen to kind of retreat a little bit from kind of the spotlight or be interviewed by foreign journalists because it's so unclear what it means to participate in that process. So Reverend Chu was obviously already in exile by the time that we spoke to him, and that's why it made it kind of much safer to use his story. Similarly with Finn, right? I mean, the only exception of somebody who's kind of actively in jail that we spend a lot of time on is Gwyneth Ho, as you mentioned. But with her it was also a little bit easier because she has written so much, right? She's so prolific. She's written very, very, very long articles before, and we got pretty close to her friends. The journalist circle in Hong Kong is obviously quite small, so we know a lot of people who knew her. So that made it like a little bit easier to tell her story, even though access to her was obviously very, very limited, right? So there was a lot of safety considerations, frankly, with approaching this.
Well, actually, both of you are among the braves, actually, writing this book. Thank you so much for doing this. And now I just want to ask you, how do you feel after this book is published? Do you think going back to Hong Kong, there's certain risks to it? Because, with the enactment of the national security law, with writing something like this, so detailed, right? And also opinionated to a certain extent. How do you feel about going back for a visit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we started this book, a lot of the people that we spoke to, we gave them confidence that we wouldn't be going back to Hong Kong as a way to kind of protect them. I mean, it's just a variable that we can't control. There's concerns about, people that we've talked to, messages on our phones, emails, of course, everything that you do as a journalist. So I think, we're more concerned probably about, source protection, about making sure that the people that we talk to have the confidence in us. So yeah, I don't think that's something that will be, happening for us going back.
Yeah, and just to add, right, like as we all know, the red lines here are so deliberately unclear, and this whole national security apparatus is constantly shifting and changing and moving. Even when I talk to my colleagues who work as journalists in mainland China, right, the Hong Kong situation is so different because it's so unformed, right? It's so kind of amorphous at this point still, and we don't really know kind of where the lines are, where the markers are. Whereas in the mainland, the system is quite refined at this point, right? That you get warnings, you kind of know when you cross that line, you sort of it's a dance, it's a negotiation, but still. And I think that's something that all journalists in Hong Kong, sort of face today. And yeah, I think that's part of the reason why, I think we chose both for the safety of our source protection and also just, for kind of our own reasons to, not be sort of based in Hong Kong at the moment.
Honestly, I think there could be a part 2 to this book too. I mean, I run the radio, not radio, but internet, YouTube channel, right? So I still have people in Hong Kong that I co-host almost every week. Liu Mengxiong, Lau Monghong, right? He was formerly a member of the Political Consultative Conference, even though appear on the surface as blue, but definitely he visited the pandemic people in jail too. We still try to defend the original one country, two systems. And then you have some of the older guys like Kwok Chek-in. He is famous for doing all the judicial review, 80 years of age. So this could be a good project to work on, and seriously, even like this coming 2024, we try to bring the World Hong Kong Forum back to Hong Kong. Like if that include international businesses opportunities to bring back to Hong Kong, would they arrest all the delegates? Seriously, I'm just toying with the idea about that. But I mean, like, I don't know, like for me, like FCC, it's different from 2 years ago now. I mean, I personally haven't been back for 2.5 years, but then it's something. I mean, the diaspora community can think about. Some of the people who have left, they don't think about going back again. But is it really that bad? I mean, is it publishing like a book like this? Is it that controversial? Is that something the Hong Kong government cannot stand? I think it's something that we can really think about.
Yeah, and you don't actually know the answer to that question. I mean, so far people have been ordering the book on Amazon and stuff, and it's arrived. I mean, people have been getting it in Hong Kong, which has been, kind of encouraging, right? And it's really hard to know what they will go after and what they will sort of leave alone, right? Like why the Sheik book and not other books? It's like it's impossible to know. But I agree. I mean, for whatever space that's left, right, we should be fighting for it, and that's why. I think we were quite vocal when the FCC, canceled the Human Rights Press Awards and stuff, because it's like, if nobody's taking that space from you, why do you give it up yourself, right? It's like you should like hang on to as much space you have to push as much as you can, like as much as for as long as you can, right? Until they sort of like explicitly sort of take that away from you, I think. But yeah.
I mean, if they are still being detained, I mean, if the verdict is not out, I mean, I know Hang Tong Zhao Hang Tong, right? It's still active in her social media, right? Even fast food, right? I mean, yeah. So they can still connect to the outside world.
Totally, and that's why Gwyneth's story was sort of like so important to us. I mean, she was so rare in pleading sort of not guilty, which was obviously an incredibly brave thing to do in the environment, right? And she's clearly wanting to use her position as a political prisoner, as somebody who's been imprisoned, right, to kind of like show the absurdity of the Hong Kong legal system and the justice system, right, by kind of arguing that how can this 47 case be a conspiracy when it was all public, right? I mean, it's the most public conspiracy ever. Everything is on social media. Like, what kind of sneaky, like, secret conspiracy is there, right? And I think that's why like she was so important for us to kind of write about and sort of highlight.
Yeah. It's Book Casino selling your book in Hong Kong. Book Casino.
I don't know. We will find out.
Yeah, we haven't heard of it being stocked at any shops yet. But we do know that people have sent us photos and posted on social media of getting it via Amazon or other overseas book outlets. So there is that option. But in terms of like actually being stocked at a store, we haven't seen that yet.
So the national security law is surreal. They dare not to stock it up in Hong Kong.
I guess it's on the bookstore owner, right? So I guess it's like they have to manage their own sort of risk assessment. But at least for Amazon, they've successfully been delivering all these books to Hong Kong.
So go through Amazon. It's it's the better choice. Yeah, right. Well, I guess finally, I don't want to drag on for too long, but how much impact this could have. But do you think the Hong Kong government, John Lee or Chris Tang, if you send them, a book like this, what do you think would be the impact? I mean, definitely, if I were writing it, I want them to know the true Hong Kong story, how they feel, because it seems like to me that what they really care about is their job, right? And after APEC, like John Lee cannot go because of the sanction, and with Paul Chen representing Hong Kong, it's not representing what most Hong Kong people feel. Most Hong Kong people feel the genuine one country, two systems should be intact until 2047, and then it's all gone after 2020, right? So people are suffering. So I think your book, if they have a copy of it, would be an eye-opening thing for them, and then they could learn more about, why people go out for protest in a non-violent or even in a more progressive way. I mean, this is how, after I finished reading your book, that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, we approach this like journalists. We did reach out to almost every kind of official, in Hong Kong to try to talk to them. The response that we got from Carrie Lam is in the book and in the afterwards. So we did try to speak to all these people. I certainly would have very much loved to hear kind of their insights and their takes on and kind of their details of what was going on in 2019, what was going on in 2020. Unfortunately, that those, I think, those never panned out. They never spoke to us. It's a shame. I think, it would be nice if people had a better kind of understanding of what happened. But then again, I don't find it at all surprising that they wouldn't want to discuss what's happened, because I think they're part of this very active thing that's happening now to kind of rewrite and recast the history of not just 2019, but 1989 with the removal of the Pillar of Shame. There's a huge rewriting of history, and those two people that you mentioned, Chris Hang and John Lee, are certainly part of that rewriting and that recasting of what took place.
And what's really amazing, right? When you go back to 2019, when you go back to the press releases from the government at the time, so many of them were like thanking Hong Kong people for protesting peacefully, right? Especially in the beginning. And, there was so much of it talking about how universal suffrage, as promised in the basic law, is an end goal for Hong Kong, right? I mean, it was all there. And, it's sort of like what they're saying now with the, like, everything is black violence, riots, this and that. It goes against their own narrative that they were speaking back then. And I think that was, to us, one of the most important things to kind of document. We had somebody, and it's in the book, say to us that, when they asked Carrie Lam at the time whether this was, US interference or anything, she was like, of course not. I mean, they knew the situation they had created in Hong Kong. They knew this was the legitimate grievances of people. How could they not know, right? And so that's why it's stunning in 2023 now to see the narrative having shifted in such a way, right? And I think that's what we hope our book will be, like this like permanent thing that you can pick up and hold in your hand, be like, this is really what happened, right? This is sort of the actual history, right, as opposed to what's sort of being manipulated or sort of rewritten now.
But again, this is more like a book report to me. After reading it, I think it helps me to understand more about the Lam Chao philosophy behind. But more so, if you guys are working on a second book, I even have like a contact of Pastor Kun, who is a legislator. I mean, I see more persecution and more repression coming up in Hong Kong, and then these guys are the ones who are having the electrical seats. And then if we can find, let's say, more of a neutral zone, and I'm not kidding you, we try to bring the third or maybe the fourth World Hong Kong Forum back to Hong Kong. We have to bet on our safety, of course, and let these guys also come in form of a dialogue, some sort of a round table of sorts, right? So let hear them, or instead of because we are kind of outside of Hong Kong now, and they don't think like us. I mean, they're indoctrinated with this so-called love China, love the motherland philosophy, and of course Xi Jinping as well. So, but once again, congratulate on the book. And maybe before we close today, we got 5 more minutes. Is there any other tour you would like to do in 2024 to bring this book to the public?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would love to go to the UK. Obviously the Hong Kong community there is well, for a number of reasons. One, that the Hong Kong community there is big, and it's quite active, and a lot of people have moved there. We have a lot of friends there, former journalists there, so it'd be great to get to the UK. Aside from the Hong Kong community, I think the British public has a lot of interest in Hong Kong, given the colonial connections in 1997 and Chris Patton and all the history there. So I think it would be great to get there, to meet a lot of people, to talk about the book. We did do a lot of reporting specifically about the handover that didn't make it in to the book. A lot of kind of historical reporting that we did with people who were involved in those discussions from the British side who are still alive. We're very open in kind of talking about that stuff to us. So we would love to go and talk about it there. And then I also think in Taiwan would be great. We're in discussions now. One of the questions that we've gotten a lot is about a Chinese language translation of the book. That's in the very first stages of happening. Hopefully we'll have updates for people soon about a timeline on that. But a few publishers in Taiwan reached out to us after the book was published. So we'd love to go there as well and kind of talk to people and meet people and see some of the people that are in the book, actually, because Reverend Xu lives there and some other people live there now too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with translations, right? I think like Japanese, Korean, like all like there were a lot of East Asian countries that really, really cared about Hong Kong's story, right? Japan especially. So I think there's hopefully as things progress, we can share more kind of updates about different versions and translations.
As journalists, have you ever thought Hong Kong would be like this? I mean, the one country, two systems with this so-called extreme makeover. Have you thought that we end up, having a conversation? Should be a FCC talking right now.
I know.
I
know. It's ironic. I've organized so many book talks from the FCC, but we haven't gotten one invitation to speak there thus far. So I think that says something. No, but honestly, it's like, I think as foreign correspondents, right, we've moved to so many places that like once you arrive there, you can kind of expect what the story is going to be, right? When we were in Myanmar, we were covering a very fragile democratic transition that was obviously very shaky. When we were in Chicago, obviously gun violence and sort of like racial tensions and issues that was very much front and center. That was like expected. Yeah. I think when we went to Hong Kong, it was so hard to expect how everything would unfold, right? And I think the most shocking thing sitting here today is like what's happened to the legal systems and the courts, right? If anybody had if there was faith in anything, right, it was that the legal system, the common law system especially, would hold up, right? And now you see prosecutors saying the crime, the primary was the worst, most egregious crime you can commit in Hong Kong. You have Chris Tang, before Jimmy Lai even goes to trial, saying the whole world will see how bad his crimes are in an interview with the SCMP. I mean, all of that is like just pretty fundamentally, like, I think really shocking to feel like institutions can crumble so quickly like that, right?
I mean, I can tell you, people from the finance community and also business community, even if they are with the blue camp, so to speak, they see the impact after 2020. And a lot of people are moving their assets and also their families overseas now. So even at the very surface level, they say, I love the country, the motherland, Hong Kong and all that. They know this extreme makeover, kills them, kills their businesses. And you see the real estate prices have dropped a lot, and also life in general. It's just difficult. So there's it's difficult to say good Hong Kong story.
Yeah. Very hard to tell those right now at the moment.
Yeah. But once again, congratulate on this book, and also I look forward to seeing the translated version in hopefully traditional Chinese. That's the characters we are used to.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Shibani and Tim. Thank you for
Great. Thanks so much for having us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Please don't leave yet.